Dr. Zara Calloway had always been different. A brilliant engineer. She didn't just study alien technology, she wanted to push humanity's boundaries beyond anything anyone had ever dreamed of. Stationed aboard the Valhalla, a state-of-the-art research vessel, Zara spent her days sifting through the mysteries of space, searching for the hidden secrets of long-forgotten civilizations. Humanity's place in the galaxy, she believed, depended on what lay beyond the stars. The Valhalla was stationed on the edge of known space, just near a vast and eerie region called the Black Rift. This part of the galaxy had been a source of fascination and fear for millennia. Gravitational anomalies, strange energy surges, and missing fleets had all made the Black Rift notorious. Whole civilizations had vanished into its depths, leaving behind nothing but fragmented ruins and broken pieces of forgotten technology. No one knew exactly why the rift was so dangerous, but it had been enough to keep most of the galaxy's inhabitants at a safe distance. Yet, it was the perfect place for Zara and her crew to investigate. As a scientist driven by discovery, the Black Rift was her greatest challenge, and she was ready to face it head-on. Her team aboard the Valhalla had been studying a bizarre energy signature for weeks. The signal was unlike anything they had encountered before, far too regular to be a random anomaly. Zara's eyes sparkled with excitement as she stared at the data on her screen. The signal was faint, but it was a distress call. Or at least, that's what Zara thought at first. She was no stranger to alien distress signals. Every species had its own form of communication, and the Black Rift was known to harbor lost technologies. But this one felt different. Zara spent sleepless nights analyzing the signal, trying to decode it. The crew joked that she was addicted to mystery, always chasing the unknown. But to Zara, the unknown was where the future lay. If she could find the source of this signal, who knew what kind of technology or knowledge they could uncover? The potential for humanity was limitless. Then, one night, as Zara sat alone in the quiet of the ship's lab, the signal finally revealed its true nature. The message was more than just a cry for help, it was a warning. A coded transmission, a plea from an ancient species, far beyond what Zara could have ever imagined. The signal described a massive fleet, the Death Fleet, a name whispered in forgotten texts and legends, the likes of which no one had seen for millennia. The fleet was not a single ship or a small battalion. It was an entire armada, an ancient force with the power to destroy civilizations in the blink of an eye. The more Zara decoded, the worse it got. According to the transmission, the fleet had been dormant for ages, sealed away by a long-extinct race that had once ruled over vast stretches of the galaxy. The signal warned that the fleet was on a collision course with the galaxy and that the Valhalla had inadvertently triggered its reawakening. Zara's pulse quickened as she read the final lines of the message. "We have sealed away the fleet to protect all life, but now it stirs again. You must not awaken it, for the galaxy is not prepared." Zara's mind raced. The Death Fleet was not just a myth, it was real, and she had set it into motion. The Valhalla's sensors were still picking up strange energy signatures. Zara quickly alerted her crew, and they scrambled to understand what was happening. The fleet, ancient and incomprehensible, was waking up from its long slumber. Zara felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. She had been the one to trigger it. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a catastrophe. A force like the Death Fleet could obliterate entire star systems, and the galaxy had been powerless to stop it for centuries. Now, thanks to her research, the galaxy was on the brink of something that could reshape all of existence. Zara spent the next few hours feverishly working through the transmission's details. The Death Fleet was composed of ships powered by unimaginable technology, their weapons capable of destroying entire planets. The fleet's creators, an ancient and godlike race, had once believed that their power would keep the galaxy safe, preserving the balance of life and death. But when their civilization fell, the fleet was sealed away, never to be reactivated. No one thought the fleet would ever return, and yet now, through the Valhalla's unintentional actions, the ancient fleet was beginning to stir. With every passing minute, Zara felt the weight of her discovery press harder on her chest. This wasn't just a science experiment gone wrong, it was the potential end of everything. The message from the fleet's creators was clear: the fleet has been sealed for a reason. It was never meant to protect the galaxy from external threats, but from a greater force that none of you can comprehend. Zara had always believed that the unknown held the key to humanity's future. But now, she wondered if she had awakened something that humanity wasn't ready to face. The universe had countless mysteries, and not all of them were meant to be uncovered. As Zara stared out of the ship's viewport into the darkness of the Black Rift, she knew one thing for certain: what lay ahead was a question of survival, and it might already be too late to stop what had been set in motion. The Death Fleet was coming. Zara Calloway hadn't anticipated the storm her discovery would unleash. The Valhalla had barely completed its initial scan of the Death Fleet beacon when the first signals reached the Intergalactic High Command, IHC. As soon as the message hit their vast network, it was clear that the IHC, the powerful governing body of the galaxy's most influential species, would not take kindly to the fact that a single human research vessel had triggered the awakening of the legendary fleet. The IHC, made up of both human and alien leaders, controlled the galaxy's laws, military forces, and countless resources. They were used to having their hands on everything of importance, and Zara's discovery was far too significant to leave in the hands of a small crew. Soon after, Zara's communications officer received the official transmission. The IHC demanded all data related to the Death Fleet beacon and its encoded message be handed over immediately. Zara's heart sank as she read the demand. The urgency was palpable, their words cold and calculated. There was no room for negotiation. As the Valhalla continued its journey back toward the core systems, Zara found herself torn. On the one hand, she understood the significance of what she had uncovered. The Death Fleet wasn't just a legendary force. It was a tangible, real threat that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. On the other hand, Zara was a scientist. She understood the value of knowledge, of understanding what lay behind ancient technologies, and the last thing she wanted was for her discovery to be weaponized. It was clear from the IHC's tone that they didn't seek diplomacy. They wanted power. Zara's first instinct was to refuse their demands. She had always believed that humanity should have a voice in the galaxy, that they should lead, not just follow. But the IHC's pressure only intensified. They were ready to send military forces to seize the beacon and any data stored aboard the Valhalla. As the commander of the ship, Zara was now caught in a political quagmire, one that threatened not only her crew but the fate of the galaxy itself. Her officers, once loyal to her, began to voice their concerns. The Valhalla's first officer, Captain Jack Harding, was a staunch believer in the need for humanity to control its future. He argued that if the IHC wanted the beacon's secrets, they should give it to them. Humanity, after all, had a right to wield this power before anyone else. Others, however, disagreed. The ship's medical officer, Dr. Leela Wu, was increasingly concerned about the potential consequences of sharing the technology with the IHC. What if the Death Fleet was more than just an invading force? What if activating it in the wrong way could cause untold destruction, or worse, invite an even greater threat? As the debates raged on, Zara found herself questioning her own judgment. She had always been the one to push boundaries, to chase knowledge without hesitation. But now, with the weight of the galaxy's future pressing on her, she realized how little she knew about the forces she was dealing with. Was humanity ready to handle the immense power of the Death Fleet's technology? Would they use it responsibly, or would they repeat the same mistakes that had led to the fall of countless civilizations before them? In the midst of this growing divide, Zara began to uncover something more unsettling. Hidden within the decoded beacon was a more cryptic message, one that spoke of a dark catalyst, a force tied to the Death Fleet that would not only threaten individual species, but the very fabric of the galaxy itself. This information only deepened Zara's dilemma. The Death Fleet might not be the ultimate danger after all. There were whispers in the signal of a far more sinister force, one that had used the fleet as a means of containment. Zara couldn't shake the feeling that the IHC wasn't just after the technology to fight the fleet. They might be more interested in unlocking this dark catalyst for themselves. To make matters worse, Zara discovered that General Kyle Rise, one of the most powerful figures within the IHC's military branch, had taken a personal interest in her findings. Kyle was known for his ruthless tactics and his relentless pursuit of power. Zara had heard rumors of his plans to expand the IHC's control across the galaxy through military dominance, using any means necessary to achieve his goals. If Kale was involved in the pursuit of the Death Fleet technology, it would not be for peace, but for conquest. The tension on the Valhalla grew unbearable. Officers who had once supported Zara began to question her leadership. They were afraid not just of the IHC, but of what they had uncovered. They saw the beacon not as a bridge to enlightenment, but as a weapon that could plunge the galaxy into chaos. The crew's unity began to fracture. Some, like Captain Harding, still believed humanity had the right to control the technology, while others, led by Dr. Woe, feared the consequences of making the wrong choice. Zara's mind raced as she tried to find a way forward. She couldn't ignore the fact that the IHC's demands were becoming more forceful, more urgent. They were prepared to send a fleet to drag her and her crew back under their control if they had to. But at what cost? What if this wasn't just about the Death Fleet? What if the IHC's true goal was to harness the power of the Dark Catalyst for themselves, without fully understanding the dangers it posed? What if, by giving them control of the beacon, Zara would be sealing the galaxy's doom? The pressure was suffocating, and Zara knew she couldn't make this decision alone. Her crew, now divided, looked to her for guidance. Zara realized that the choices she made in the coming days would determine the fate of not just her ship, but of countless worlds. She had been entrusted with knowledge that could change everything. But with that knowledge came the burden of responsibility, a weight that would shape her actions forever. As the IHC's deadline loomed, Zara faced a decision that could either save or destroy everything she had worked for. The beacon's message was clear: the galaxy was on the brink of war. But who would be the ones to fight it, and what would they be fighting for? The Valhalla hovered in the heart of the Black Rift, its crew on edge as the immense force of the unknown stretched around them. The strange energy patterns from the beacon had only intensified as they approached the origin point hidden deep in a region of space that was, for all intents and purposes, forgotten by time. Zara Calloway stood at the forefront of the ship's command center. Her eyes focused on the screens ahead, but her mind raced with every possible outcome of what they were about to uncover. The closer they got, the more surreal it all felt. A dense fog of strange gravitational anomalies surrounded them, making it difficult to track the ship's position. The team had already lost contact with the outside galaxy. Communications were blocked by some unknown force. It was as if the Black Rift itself wanted to keep them isolated, an unwelcoming sentinel for something buried for eons. Zara had never felt more alone. Dr. Calloway, Captain Harding's voice crackled through the comms. "We're in position. The energy signatures. They're off the charts. Whatever's here, it's real." Zara nodded, a lump forming in her throat. The legend of the Death Fleet was no longer just a story, no longer a warning. It was tangible, real. The moment they activated the beacon, the fleet's dormant ships had begun stirring, slowly coming to life, one by one. There were no longer any doubts. The fleet was awakening. "Prepare yourself," she said, her voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. "This is about to get much more complicated." As Zara and her team descended to the surface of the central station, a colossal structure buried beneath the folds of the Black Rift, they began uncovering startling truths. The station was ancient, a mix of organic and mechanical design that far surpassed any technology humanity had ever encountered. The floors pulsed with a faint bioluminescence, and walls etched with symbols Zara didn't recognize seemed to come alive under their touch. This place was more than just a repository of ancient tech. It was alive, feeding off the energy of the fleet, ready to reactivate it. The eerie hum of the station seemed to resonate in Zara's bones. But it wasn't until they reached the heart of the facility that everything began to change. Zara stepped into what could only be described as the command center, a colossal, circular room with a view that stretched to the edges of the rift itself. In the center stood a series of ancient consoles, displaying the fleet's immense power slowly awakening. A map of the galaxy unfolded on one screen, showing a silent but menacing trajectory toward the core of galactic civilization. She studied the display, her heart hammering in her chest. At the center of the fleet was a massive ship, its architecture incomprehensible, a fusion of organic matter and metallic exoskeleton. This was no simple war machine. Zara's hands trembled as she accessed the historical data embedded within the system, and what she uncovered rocked her to the core. The Death Fleet was not a weapon of destruction, it was a judge. The fleet's creators were an ancient species, long wiped from the galaxy, who had designed the fleet not to conquer, but to cleanse. They had built the fleet as a final measure, a correction to the growing corruption of sentient civilizations. According to the records, species like humanity growing rapidly, exploiting resources, spreading without regard, had become threats to the balance of the universe itself. The fleet had been created to restore that balance by eradicating civilizations that had crossed a certain threshold of destruction. Zara's breath caught in her throat. Humanity, her people, had been marked as a threat. Her mind raced. Was humanity really that dangerous? Had they really become the monsters that ancient civilizations had feared? The thought of it was suffocating. Zara had always believed in the potential of humanity, that they could rise above their flaws. But now, standing in the heart of the Death Fleet, the reality was impossible to ignore. This was not a myth. It was not just a weapon of war, it was a measure of judgment. And if Zara didn't act fast, humanity's time might have already run out. Zara, Captain Harding's voice, pulled her from her reverie. He was standing beside her now, staring at the glowing holographic displays. What exactly are we looking at here? I thought the Death Fleet was just a story. It's not just a story, Zara replied, her voice tight with the weight of the discovery. It's real, and it's not here to conquer. It's here to judge us. Harding frowned, his brow furrowing. Judge us? What do you mean by that? They've been dormant for millennia. But according to this data, the fleet's creators, they saw civilizations like ours as threats. We've reached a point where we're destroying more than we're creating. And now we're the ones who might face the consequences. The room fell silent as the realization spread like a dark cloud among them. The crew had always suspected something huge was at stake, but now they saw the terrifying truth laid bare. The fleet was awakening, and humanity's place in the galaxy was about to be judged by a force beyond comprehension. Zara's eyes flickered back to the console, but the decision was clear. The fleet had begun its awakening sequence. Ships were lighting up, their engines humming with power. If they didn't act now, humanity would be at the mercy of this ancient system of judgment, and no fleet, no weapon could stop it. Her mind reeled as she considered her options. Could they stop the fleet without triggering a galactic war? If she destroyed the fleet, it might be viewed as a hostile act, and the IHC would retaliate. But if she allowed it to proceed, it might cleanse humanity from the galaxy altogether. Zara's heart wrenched with the knowledge that there might be no way out. But as the ships continued to stir, the countdown to a galactic judgment started. She had to make a decision. She had to act, and fast. The fate of humanity, the future of the galaxy, was in her hands now. And the weight of that responsibility was suffocating. Could humanity truly overcome its flaws, or would they become the very thing that caused their extinction? In that moment, Zara understood the true horror of the Death Fleet. It wasn't just the fleet's destructive power, it was its certainty. The fleet was the last judgment of an ancient race. A race that had seen too many civilizations fall, and now it was coming for humanity. Zara stood before the pulsating core of the Death Fleet, her mind racing with the enormity of the decision she had just made. The ships, ancient and unknowable, continued to stir in the vastness of space around her. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and she knew the world she once knew would never be the same. Her crew, uncertain but loyal, looked to her for guidance. In the face of overwhelming uncertainty, Zara had decided to take a step that no one had dared before. She would merge human ingenuity with the Death Fleet's unfathomable technology. Instead of fighting the fleet or allowing it to enact its judgment, she chose to integrate with it. She created a neural interface, a system that would allow human consciousness to directly communicate with the fleet's complex, ancient AI. It was a gamble, a dangerous, uncharted move, but Zara believed it was the only way. Humanity could not fight the fleet. It was too powerful, too old. And simply submitting to its judgment would mean the extinction of the very species she had spent her life trying to protect. There had to be a middle ground, a way for humanity to survive, but also to change, to evolve, and to understand the galaxy in a new way. The interface hummed to life as Zara connected her mind with the fleet systems. It was like nothing she had ever experienced before, an overwhelming flood of data, alien thoughts, and distant echoes of long-dead civilizations. The technology was far beyond human comprehension, but Zara's mind, aided by the interface, began to process the information at an astonishing rate. She felt the collective consciousness of the fleet's creators, an ancient, godlike race who had once shaped the galaxy. Their thoughts were cold, calculating, and focused entirely on survival. They had created the fleet not as a weapon of conquest, but as a judge, an enforcer of the galaxy's delicate balance. And now, as their dormant fleet reactivated, the creators' will had come alive once more. But it wasn't about destroying humanity. No. It was about something else, something far bigger. Zara's mind reached deeper, tapping into the network of the fleet, unlocking secrets that had been buried for millennia. She felt herself standing on the precipice of a new era, an era where humanity was not just a species among many, but something more. The connection between her mind and the fleet's systems was no longer just a simple interface. It was a union. She could sense the intelligence of the fleet beginning to merge with her own, recalibrating its purpose. The fleet, once a judgmental force, now had a new directive, one shaped by human empathy, ingenuity, and a drive for survival. The change was immediate. Ships that had once been mindless machines of destruction now hummed with a new purpose. They were not just judging. They were learning, evolving, and adapting. Humanity was no longer merely the target of a galaxy-wide judgment. They were participants, co-creators in a new reality. Zara's heart raced as she felt the fleet shift, recalibrate its algorithms, and open up new possibilities. But just as she thought she had achieved the impossible, just as she believed the galaxy had been spared its fate of destruction, a final transmission cut through the neural interface, a message from the fleet's creators. It wasn't what she had expected. The mission was never to cleanse humanity alone. The voice echoed in Zara's mind. It was cold, impersonal, yet undeniably powerful. The true purpose of the Death Fleet is to prepare for the coming of a greater threat. A force older than any civilization, even the creators themselves. It has been stirring in the farthest reaches of space. The fleet was never meant to protect only against humanity's corruption. It was built to protect the galaxy from something far darker. Zara's blood ran cold as the words sank in. The fleet's creators had not been preparing for humanity's judgment, they had been preparing for something else. Something far beyond their understanding. And now, through her union with the fleet, humanity was inexplicably tied to that mission. The message continued, the tone of the fleet's creators growing more desperate. The darkness approaches. You have unlocked the final phase. Humanity will be our last defense. But you must understand, there is no salvation without sacrifice. There is no victory without a price. Zara blinked, her mind struggling to process the enormity of what she had just uncovered. A deeper threat, one beyond anything they had ever imagined, was coming. The Death Fleet had been a precaution, a safeguard, but against what? What was this darker force that had been dormant for so long? And why was humanity now bound to face it? Zara stumbled backward, her head spinning. She had thought that by merging with the fleet, she had created a new path away for humanity to survive. But now, she realized, she had made them a part of something much larger. The galaxy was not just on the verge of judgment, it was on the brink of a galactic war. And humanity, with all its flaws, had just become the key player in that conflict. The emotional weight of the decision hit her all at once. Humanity had survived, yes. They had rewritten the rules of intergalactic diplomacy, merging with an ancient, judgmental force that had once threatened to annihilate them. But at what cost? They were now forever intertwined with the fleet's mission tasked with guarding the galaxy against a threat they couldn't even comprehend. The future was now a shared existence. Humanity had secured its place in the galaxy, but it had also inherited a responsibility it was not prepared for. Zara had always believed in the potential of humanity. But this was something entirely different. They were no longer just a species trying to make its mark. They were now the guardians of a galaxy they could barely understand, bound to the very force that once sought to destroy them. Zara looked around at her crew, their faces reflecting the same realization. They had succeeded, but success had come with a price. A question lingered in the air, unanswered. Can humanity rise to meet this new role? Or would they fall, like all the civilizations before them, consumed by the darkness they were now destined to fight? The answer was uncertain. The stakes were higher than ever. But Zara knew one thing for sure: humanity had a new destiny now. They were no longer just survivors of the Death Fleet. They were its stewards. And the galaxy would never be the same. The final gambit had been played, and humanity was left to reckon with the consequences. The galaxy was vast, and the darkness was coming.